I want to bring in Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, member of the Judiciary and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, you have said if Republicans use the nuclear option, it would result in, quote, dangerously and perhaps disastrously radioactive fallout in the upper chamber. Senator, what exactly does that mean? Because guess what? I think they're going to go nuclear.
Great question, Steph. What it means is radioactive, not only in terms of the rules of the Senate, changing those rules to mean majority votes instead of a 60-vote threshold in all future Supreme Court nominees, but also potentially on the way the Senate operates in terms of personal relationships, and further, and maybe most important, it threatens to drag the Supreme Court itself into the muck and mire of partisanship, political gamesmanship. And the power of the Supreme Court really depends on respect and trust that the American people have. It has no armies, no police force. Its rulings are obeyed and respected simply because it is above politics. And what we're seeing now dangerously is the Supreme Court dragged into that mess.
But Senator, here's the funny little thing. The reason they would go nuclear is if you filibuster Gorsuch. So you've got the power to not filibuster him.
It is our right under the rules to filibuster someone whom we regard as out of the mainstream. He evaded our questions in the hearing, which shows very simply he follows the Trump litmus test of automatically overturning Roe v. Wade and striking down gun violence prevention measures. And the approval of a Supreme Court justice in any event ought to be by more than a razor-thin majority. It's a lifetime appointment, the nation's highest court. There ought to be bipartisan consensus. And by the way, that's the way it operated until now. Republican and Democratic presidents alike would consult senators on both sides of the aisle and choose someone who was much more mainstream.
But that's not likely. Does it not put you in a more vulnerable position? If you filibuster Gorsuch, if they go nuclear, and they could potentially have more seats to fill, you're in a worse position. Why not take a long-term view and say, how could I game this out? I mean, they're within their right. Mitch McConnell's within his right if he chooses to go nuclear.
Keep in mind, and I know well, having litigated before the Supreme Court and having clerked on the Supreme Court, that every vote is important. Everyone is potentially a swing vote. This very conservative, out-of-the-mainstream justice could not only be a swing vote, but a sway voice. He could sway other justices to his point of view. So the idea that there's a more important justice down the road, I think is mistaken. This vote is critical, and this justice we have opposed because he is potentially out of the mainstream.
Senator, I want to ask you about Syria before we go. You were part of the debate back in 2013 when the U.S. was searching for an appropriate response. What do you believe the response should be today?
You know, you were so powerful in the earlier report you did on this show. I was moved by it. And all I can say is that we need a full court press to explore what we can do with the Russians and Iranians to bring pressure on Assad. He has to go if this is the way he's going to run his country. And a combination of sanctions, potential special operations, all of the above to stop this absolutely abhorrent carnage and cruelty that takes us back to the blackest chapter in the history of the world, when chemical weapons and gassing were the way of life in a country in Eastern Europe that we know prompted the Holocaust. And so we need to take action if at all possible. And I'm going to be exploring with my colleagues an authorization for the use of military force that will enable us to do so.
When you see those children, you're reminded that we're humans before we're Americans. All right, Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.